This video is probably not going to get monetized, but...
Genocide is okay as long as we're doing it. And
that is what we're saying.
And if you're saying that from a perspective of someone who literally went through the Holocaust, or your people, your tribe, went through the fucking Holocaust, and now you're willing to do it?
I hope the irony's not lost on you.
Can you imagine if we would go around looking for every Palestinian? And then after finding every Palestinian here, then going around the world and looking for every Palestinian, no matter where they hide, going home by home, going to asking people if they are hiding a Palestinian boy, maybe, a child, a baby, because you need to eliminate them. This is what the Jews went through. Joe Rogan. To be honest, he was never my cup of tea. I'm not the person. I don't think I am the audience that he targets for. I tried listening to him several times because I have some friends that got excited for him. And I'm just gonna say, my favorite thing about Joe Rogan was the fact that he understood that he's not the smartest. I am not gonna sugarcoat it. I think that was my favorite thing about him. He knew, I mean, he probably still knows, that he's very popular, but he's not like an intellectual, let's say. Not that every intellectual these days is an actual intellectual. But Joe Rogan had this decency, humbleness, to understand that he has something to learn. So this is something I liked about him, right? And unfortunately, maybe a little he forgot, right? So Joe Rogan made this very, very brave, as in not brave at all, because that's the current trend. So
like, look what's going on with Candace Owens. Like, look what's going on with Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro.
Dude.
Like, what did she say? I want to know what she was fired for. Because was it criticism of Israel? Was it, I mean, did she show that Edward Snowden video that he put up on Twitter that shows them
maybe
drone bombing those kids that are, those men, I should say unarmed people that were walking towards the rubble?
The thing is that Joe Rogan managed in 2 minutes to pack so much wrong and so many misunderstanding, lies, misrepresentations. Like in 2 minutes, there is so much to unpack. It's like, yeah, it's like a page from the Torah. Just a few sentences and there is so much to unpack. Unfortunately, nothing there is too smart. Anyway, let's start. So he starts by talking about the Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens dispute. I'll be honest, I don't follow their work that closely to know exactly. I just have several videos I watched here and there, and I can comment on one thing that I saw Candace Owens saying, and that was that she was in Jerusalem and she saw the Muslim quarter, Christian quarter, Jewish quarter, and the Armenian quarter, and then she said something about the fact that it proves there is segregation in Israel because each religion is forced into a quarter in the old city of Jerusalem. Which, if she was working in my network, right? First of all, Ben Shapiro is a Jew, you know, so listening to that, it kind of hurts the soul so badly for so many reasons. I don't know where to start. Should I start about the reason that it's segregated like that? Should I talk about how in the Muslim quarter there used to live Jews and Christians and what happened to them? How they were ethnically cleansed, how they were in 48, how they were slaughtered in 29, how they were ethnically cleansed several years before that in the 1910s, and then they were butchered also in the 19th century, and so on and so forth. And every time it was by most of the last at least 500,000 years, it was mostly by Muslims. How long has it been since the Crusaders controlled Jerusalem? On average, every 20, 30, 40 years maybe, you'd get either slaughtered or expelled. You know, all kind of stuff happened to you in that quarter that also used to house Jewish residents and Christian residents. And it was under the Jordanian regime, when it was captured, they didn't bother doing anything. It was a ruin. They didn't have running water, they didn't have sewage there, and it all thanks to the great mismanagement of the Muslim community in every step of the way, okay? Because it was like that under Jordan law, but it was also like that under Brits, because they were scary, you know? You go inside and you're of the wrong religion and good luck to you. So does it hurt when somebody tells you that you're segregating? You know, as a Jew, you know, as someone who is a Jew, Jerusalem is so important to any Jew. And I'm making a video about Zionism, and of course, every year, every Jew around the world would say, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. This is how important Jerusalem is to Judaism and Jews. So important that Jews would get expelled and slaughtered in that city and would go back to it every time. So for the most of the last 2,000 years, most of the time, the majority of the residents in Jerusalem were actually Jewish. This is how important Jerusalem was to the Jews, even when it was in shambles, even when it was in ruins, and even when it was an incredibly hard to live in city. When Owens, with her journalistic integrity or lack thereof, is calling out the Muslim Quarter as a proof of how evil the Jews in Israel are for segregating them, it hurts really bad to any Jew who knows that those who suffer from segregation were in fact not the Muslims, were in fact the Jews that were living in that quarter. It was them that were suffering, for the real victims and were ethnically cleansed from them and from there. And this is why, you know, it's quarters like that. As a Jew, I would not have tolerated it either. To have a worker, someone that is supposed to be an intellectual and give their opinions and then spread that kind of misinformation, that's a good enough reason to fire someone, because they don't do their work. They don't do their due diligence, and then they stand by it, you know, because both Joe Rogan and Owens, you see, there are several types of mentalities that are the kind of people who don't really think. So there is the woke style mentality, right? So it's like, oh, look at me, I have so much empathy and things like that, which, I mean, all parties do it, but there is one way of being like, I don't know, more left-leaning or feeling more like, oh, I'm all for equal, I don't know. And then there is the bro mentality, like Joe Rogan was like, I'm a bro, I'm a man, you know, I want men are men. And I feel like Owens also has this mentality of being like a bro mentality, where they don't think, but they are like the opposite. So I don't think those two spectrums are really like that different, except they're just trying to be opposite of each other. Except when it comes to Jews, like right idiots, like right, let's say bro types tend to be like right wing, and then the feminine bro thing is like more on the left leaning usually. I'm being very, very, right now that's the trend, okay? It switches around all the time. You cannot follow. But it's two types of mentalities that don't like thinking. So you have the right-wing anti-Semitism and that bro mentality. It was like, oh. And then you have left-wing anti-Semitism, where it's like, oh no, the Jews are like this or like that. Anyway, let's continue. I think Owens, I don't know. I wouldn't want her to represent my company, you know.
It clearly weren't causing any danger to anybody.
Yeah,
They
right.
just bombed them.
Yeah, no, it's your duty. It's just like for Biden or whoever you like, you're supposed to cover up for them because.
But the whole thing is like they were always saying they're only targeting Hamas and everybody else is a casualty. Well, if those guys are just unarmed civilians and they're walking alone, that's what they appear to be.
Dresden.
And you just blast them from the sky with robots.
Read a book about operations in terrorist mentality kind of society, something from Afghanistan or Iraq. Just read about how civilians can be used in a battlefield. Just as basic like knowledge. And then these are men and they are being targeted for a reason. Probably it's a place they shouldn't be at, probably. And it can get really troublesome really fast. This is why they had to be eliminated.
This is the tragedy of war.
Yeah, this
Why
is
do
insane.
people talk
And
about things
no one
they
knows
don't
what to think
understand?
now, because if you can't talk about that, if you can't say that's real, then you're saying that genocide is okay as long as we're doing it.
What are you saying, idiot? If you have a genocidal mentality, then you don't waste that much money on people. I don't know why at this point drives me crazy. And then those are not kids, these are men.
And
That is what we're saying.
And if you're saying that from a perspective of someone who literally went through the Holocaust.
You're saying it's like the Holocaust. If we need to think like the Holocaust, then what we are doing is such a waste of resources and money. It's so much cheaper to just...
Or your people, your tribe, went through the fucking Holocaust and now you're willing to do it?
I hope the irony's not lost on you.
It's so nuts.
So, here's what drives me crazy, right? Like, how can you... It hurts my soul, just the math of it. You know how much jet fuel costs? And those drones and those, those airstrikes or those strikes with drones that are so accurate? If it was a genocide, just rating random boys, right? Why spend so much money on that? You know, the National Socialist Movement, what they were thinking about, like their mind, they were like, how, even just bullets, you know, just pure bullets, that was a lot of money for like putting people in a row, and then that was like all the metal and everything. That's expensive. So they had to come up with a more, like with better ways and like cheaper ways of doing it. This is a genocide mentality.
It's so hard to imagine that someone where a culture, like a country was like officially founded in what, 47?
48.
48? Okay, officially founded. So that's so recent.
Israel was declaring independence in 48. That is recent, but the history is long. Is India. Do you think India doesn't have history? It was like it declared its independence around the same time. India has no history. Judaism has no history. Jews have no history in that land. Jerusalem has no history. The country has no history. You know, there were yeshivas in Tveria and Hebron and all those countries in the 14th century, and all those countries and all those cities in Israel in the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century, forever and ever now. The Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, was written in Jerusalem. There was so much activity always around Jerusalem and around Israel for the Jewish people. The thing is, like, one of the reasons I make in the Zionism movie is that this land was barren because it got ruined by those who didn't care about it. And what the Jews did to have a country is something that could have only been done with relatively modern equipment, which is eradicating malaria, bringing trees to dry up the swamps, and water technology, irrigation, reforesting a barren land. There are so many things that Jews did to make Israel something that a place you can actually live in. That all happened before World War II. So there is no, if in World War II, if that catastrophe didn't happen, Israel would have been way stronger now, with way much more people supporting it around the world, and obviously here too. There would have been many Jews that would have loved to have the chance to live here, and they couldn't because the Brits, when they colonized Israel, they didn't allow Jewish refugees in. Yeah, they allowed it for a little bit, and then they closed the doors. You know who they didn't close the doors for? Exactly, the Arabs. They could flood in as much as they wanted.
And you guys are willing to do what was done to you that led you to believe that you needed to start your own country?
It's the same. Oh my God, it's exactly the same.
You're willing to do that at least on a small scale in Gaza.
Idiot.
Like, there's nothing left.
With all due respect to those buildings, if it was only the houses and the money that Jews had that was taken from them, then it wouldn't have been such a famous catastrophe. It's something about going door to door, looking for every Jew you can find to starve them, march them, skin them, gas them, shoot them. You know, with stupidity like that, I just can't believe it's stupidity anymore. I think it's just pure evil. If you cannot see the difference between war and slaughter, I have no understanding towards people who make those comparisons. To me, you're evil, you're disgusting, you're ugly, and your soul is rotten. That's what I think of you. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a Buy Me Coffee now. It really helps. That video is probably gonna get only Gaza ads if it's gonna get monetized at all. See ya. I love you all. I'm sorry you had to see me get mad at Joe Rogan, because this kind of people, to me, are the worst. Because I prefer those who are clearly evil and psychopathic than those who pretend to be good and at the same time just watch people get treated in a way that was never treated before and then minimizing it.